There's a place called La Bamba, which is, it's hard to describe what it is. It's not a village, it's not a town, it's not a city. It's just where a group of these homes with mud, have been made and people live in. And there was this young man that was baptized, found the church, the missionaries knocked on his door, and he was, he was, I don't know if I should say, he was into things that are not according to the gospel, and he said that he was taking a nap, and so when everybody opens your door, they're not rude, and so they won't slam a door in your face, or they won't, not open it. They just will not be there if they have an appointment. But he opened the door, and there was some missionaries, and they asked if they could come back, gave him a pamphlet, and he says, I wasn't doing anything else, so I told him to come back. And so he came back, and they came back, and he was baptized. But the story doesn't end there because of his influence, because he was such an influence in the type of life that he was living before with the group. He was, they were into the smoking, the drugs, and the drinking, and that type of stuff. And but because of his change of his life, people that were following him before started following him into the gospel, saying, you've totally changed your life. What you're doing? How much do they pay you to come to church? Because why else would you do this? And stuff. And because of his influence, these young men started entering into the gospel. And so when we got there, Zweli had been a member had been a member of for a couple of months, and then another young man was baptized right after we got there, and then there started to be others and others and others. And so about 4 months after we were there, missionaries approached us as saying, would you mind if we had PMG class at your house every Monday night? Or, so we can teach them the PMG, because there's so many of them. And we said, sure. And so the first one I found, we had about 10 that came. And we had written down there was 5 members of the church, 2 that were going to be baptized, and 3 investigators that were had come. And so every Monday night for a year and a half from that time, we had PMG class, and we got to be up to 20, and then but from that group, they have just stayed so strong, and from where they come from, it's incredible to see their change in their life. But we have 3 missionaries that have gone out from that group, and we have another one that is his papers. He has an interview with the mission president on Sunday in Swaziland, and so he will be going soon. And then from that group, they asked, about a year later, if they could include some of the women, because we started having some girls from La Bamba that were starting to be interested in taking discussions, and so they started coming. And so every Monday night they were taught PMG, family home evening, testimony meetings, and then we fed them also dinner every night, and sometimes it was their only hot meal that they would get. I can remember the very first time we did it, I served them dinner, and the comments at the time were they had never had dinner around a table, they had never had dinner on a regular plate, and they hadn't celebrated birthdays, and we had birthday parties for them. But from that, I think what came from that was that support system, is that they supported each other. They became a brotherhood. They became strong in numbers, and they were able to stay strong because they were in numbers. And in fact, one young man, one of our La Bamba boys' house burned down, and he stayed with his mom and sister and stuff, and it burned down. And so within 15 minutes, we were called, and the the boys around the area were called, and so we were there taking out the fire, taking all the stuff out, getting it, to a point where it's settled. And so one of the boys said, "This is like being a Salt Lake Mormon." And at first I said to him, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Well, that when you're there, there's so many surrounding you that are members of the church that no matter what happens, you have the support system around you." And I thought that was a good way of looking at it. It's because there were so many that have joined the church and followed this young man. And not only now the young people, the older people are starting to see. And we have a couple of babes that with families that have seen the change in these group of boys that used to be not a good influence, that are now, doing such good things, that they're starting to join the church. And so their goal is to make a La Bamba branch and eventually a La Bamba ward out of it. And so that has been they have become, we call them our La Bamba boy. They become our boys, our sons. And that was probably the hardest to leave, when we had to leave them. So, but they are good boys. They're trying so hard to be good.
They're serving in elders quorum presidencies, young men presidencies,
District
young men's
mission
leader. I mean, it's just amazing the turnaround and change in their lives.